All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Android Studio Fireside Chat. My name is Redo Meyer. I'm a developer advocate working on Android and Android Studio, and these fine people are many of the folks involved in bringing us Android Studio 2.0. They need no introduction, so I'm going to make them do their own introductions. If each of you could go down and introduce yourselves, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Hi, I'm Stephanie Cuthbertson, the Group Product Manager for Android Studio.
Hi, I'm Catherine Shi. I'm the product manager for C++ and gaming support, as well as performance tools.
Hi, I'm Jerome Daucher. I'm the Android Gradle plugin tech lead.
My name is Michał Bandowski. I'm an engineer on the build Gradle plugin team.
My name is Alex Ruiz. I'm the tech lead for project support, which is integration of build system and IDEs.
Stefan Linsner. I'm a DPE and I work on the Android testing support library.
Hi, I'm Jamal Eason. I'm a product manager on Android Studio.
Hi, I'm Xavier Ducret. I'm the tech lead for the developer tools.
I'm Toon Urbi. I'm the tech lead for Android Studio.
Hi, I'm Esteban Delernal. I'm the tech lead for performance tools in Android Studio.
All right, thank you all. So the purpose of the Fireside Chat is to give you guys the opportunity to ask all of these guys anything you want to know about Android Studio. So I think we have one mic set up over here. So if you have any questions, please line up there, and I'll start taking some questions once we have some. Given that there's no one in line yet, luckily we have a few which we've gathered from social media over the last couple of days, so I'm going to start with one of those. First question, nice broad open-ended one. Why did the team move to IntelliJ, and how has that turned out?
I think Xavier should definitely answer that one.
It's a great idea, and that's it really. We thought that we could build a better, Android specific IDE on top of it, and so I hope that like today's demo actually, showed that we made the right choice, and hopefully you like it.
And also, looking around the Android team at the time, everyone who had a choice of IDE was using IntelliJ. And the Android tools team was pushing, another IDE. And so we thought, well, if the coding is so good, maybe that's what we should give our users.
Seems a reasonable approach. Question from the audience, please.
Hi, I have two questions. One of them is from yesterday, actually. Wanted to just ask about Jack and Jill, and more specifically, if there are going to be any implications for using other languages once that starts, rolling out in a more official and stable way. Specifically, like if we're using Kotlin, and Jack and Jill becomes part, like the default build tool, what will happen then?
So. Yeah, we don't have much to talk about in terms of Jack and Jill. It's still a work in progress. You can try it right now. It's still integrated in Gradle. I think we made a little bit of improvement in the actual Gradle integration, but there isn't a whole lot to talk about. Until it's at feature parity with the current toolchain, JavaC and DX, then we may just switch it as being the default, but we're not there yet anyway. So when that happens, hopefully not in too long from now, we'll do that. In the meantime, there isn't much to talk about. So regarding languages, we're aware that even though we have a new toolchain, we don't know that you guys want to be able to use different even libraries, right? Even without talking about languages, if you can't reuse any libraries, that's a problem. And so that's what Jill is for, supporting any Java bytecode and integrating that and converting that into DX. So an integration with Kotlin could be like using the Kotlin compiler and then inserting that into Jill and then converting that into DX. So it's not impossible. It may not be the most efficient path, but it's definitely possible.
Okay, cool, thank you. And the second question was about the performance test tools that were talked about earlier today in the test session. I was wondering if we instrument with those tests, will the Cloud Test Lab run those tests on like the devices, on physical devices that we specify and give us like the performance basically dumps? Because that would be really awesome.
So essentially right now it's just rules, but we definitely work with the Cloud Test Lab to get these integrated, and I think we want to look at the broader story. to not only have it in Cloud Test Lab, but maybe also in Android Studio and surface the data better so that you can get signals if something changes over time, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person, please.
Hi. When Java 8 will be officially supported and available to all Android developers, be a little more happy?
So you need to go yesterday and ask the framework team first. I know they punted some questions to us, so I'm going to punt a question to them. I mean, it's not just a tool issue. So you're asking just like 1/2 of Android, and by half I mean like I don't know 10%, right? Android is a big team.
Well, the Java 7 support was done by the framework first,
right?
And then once that was done, then we could of course do.
I mean, there isn't a whole lot of work to do on the tool side, right? Like IntelliJ supports Java 8. You have JDK, you have Java-C, it's all there, right? And so, it's first a platform problem, and you're asking the wrong people.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'd say, what I would say though is it's nice that you asked that question because I probably have taken it 7 times at lunch now. I'm not getting a chance to eat my dessert. I think that certainly there have been a wide range of people who've asked us for Java 8 support. It's definitely something we're looking at. The number one thing that we hear when people ask for Java 8 support is lambdas. So if it's lambdas you want, you should affirm that. If it's, if there's other specific language features that are very high priority for you, it'd be great to know about those as well. And I think we'd say we appreciate the feedback. We don't have anything specific to share right now.
Thank you.
We'll take this opportunity. Who would like lambdas specifically?
There we go.
So that's something of an affirmation.
Yes, that's great.
Thank you.
Very much.
We'll take you as well.
So the Android tools site is a little rough.
Can you rephrase?
What do you mean?
Is there anyone here from the Android tool site team? We'd love to have you come up on stage. No, I'm kidding. keep talking.
Just wondering, I mean, it's not typically a very useful place to visit. The roadmap still mentions your post-Android Studio 1.0 plans, so.
Rito,
yeah, so it's true that there's a couple of things that are obsolete on there. I think I would disagree that it's not useful. It's where we post a lot of information that we can do directly as engineers, as opposed to having it sort of written up and go through the whole proper, putting it into proper English. But so, it's the place where you can find the authoritative source on what you can do in the build system, for example. And there's a number of other documents we put out there, and then that have since been processed by professional doc writers into real documentation. So it's good for that, but it's true that the roadmap, and don't we have a document that says what we would like help with? And it's probably 5 years old.
Probably.
Yeah. So apologies for the outdated content.
Yeah. It has a superset of information. So it's got useful information, but also other information.
Yeah, but it is helpful when people complain that it's out of date. Then we do try to fix it. The roadmap is tricky because I think as a policy, we don't generally talk about stuff in the future.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that we do want to migrate and to significantly improve the documentation for Gradle. We already started publishing the DSL reference.
Yeah, that's
so,
an example.
Yeah, so we do want to integrate that better into developer.android.com. We do want to have a proper user guide also on developer.android.com. So everything that's been officially released in the stable channel, we do want to migrate to developer.android.com, and we're starting to have some plan to work on that soon. Tools.android.com is a good place for us to put information about stuff that's not stable, right? On developer.android.com, we don't want to put preview, things that are not final, things that may change before they get released. So we'll keep using it more as a, hey, here's the 2.0 canary, here's the bunch of stuff to look at it, that's the place where you'll find that kind of information. But we do want to migrate stuff that's now being promoted to stable, like, hey, Gradle is the official build system, to developer.android.com.
Thanks.
Please.
Hi, guys. Are there any plans to create an integration for CI into Android Studio?
Which CI?
Okay, I assume everybody's using Jenkins, probably, or a lot of people.
I don't know. Who's using Jenkins?
People.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot of people.
Who's using something else? That's still a good number, right? So, I mean, we do want to improve our CI story. I don't know that actually integrating that in Studio is the #1 goal. Maybe we should first have a CI story. You can use Jenkins right now, but it's not awesome. You have to do a lot of manual configuration, and we do want to improve that first. So once we have that, we'll probably look at what else we can do to make it an end-to-end story.
Thank you.
It would be good to know what it is you feel is missing as well. Because I know that there are plugins for a lot of things, right? So running unit tests, Android tests should be pretty...
I think he was talking specifically about studio integration with CI. Right?
Do you want like a build notification when a job is done and failed? Or what specifically do you want in the IDE?
Okay, I was recently asked by a PM about if Android Studio has something like the really nice dashboards that Xcode has for the Xcode bots.
Okay, so dashboard of running jobs, ability to right-click and say, kill this job, give my job more priority. Okay. Okay.
Got it?
Request noted. Please, if other people have questions, please jump up. It's a good opportunity to ask hard questions because there's not too many, so they can take their time answering them. In the meantime, I do have a few from online, which I can pass on. This one asks, why is ADB throughput so poor? USB 2 can do like 60 MBS, but ADB seems to cap out at about 3 megabits, etc. So why is ADB throughput so poor?
Because the protocol is stupid. It's. I mean, that's
the long answer, right?
Yeah. I mean, it sends like a little bit of data, and then it waits for an ACK, and then sends a little bit more data, and then wait for an ACK, and then it's broken. So we're fixing it. We have a better protocol coming. But that was, I don't know how it was designed that way, but it was a poor decision.
Yeah, and additionally, we're adding better throughput just on the ADB side, but also on the devices. We talked about that on the emulator talk, and it's just basically looking at increasing the throughput on both devices, which just makes it faster.
Great. Another question here, talking about the emulator. Excited to try it, but still disappointed by how long it has taken to boot up in the past. So has the boot speed for the emulator improved in the new version?
Yeah, so we didn't really talk about it as much, but we mentioned about faster CPU speed. So the boot was really about loading files onto the emulator and starting it up. So with the impact of dual core support, multi-core support, we actually can go faster, and you'll see that later on when we actually release it for release.
Fantastic. Question from the audience.
Yeah, this also came up yesterday, I guess, but I was wondering why some of the artifacts are published in a repo like JCenter and Native Central, why others are only delivered to the support, to the SDK manager. So why is it supported not in Native Central, for example?
So you have to click through a license to get those, and JCenter and Maven Central do not allow that workflow.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
Easy answer. Another question from online. Can I use Instant Run to improve turnaround times on pipelines outside of Android Studio? So they want to take advantage of all the cool things you've done, but do it outside of your tool. Such a thing possible.
Why would they want to do that?
Next question.
I couldn't imagine.
Currently, it's built inside of Android Studio, so the connection to the app is maintained by Studio. It's not done from the Gradle plugin. So there is no way to.
And Gradle doesn't really talk continuously to devices, but Studio does. Studio monitor file changes, which Gradle doesn't do. So there's a lot of things that we can do where if the integration was done, if it was just done in Gradle, it would not be as good.
Plus, even the pushing to the device is not done through Gradle today. It's done in Studio, and Studio maintains a cache, of checksums and things like that to make sure that it doesn't have to push the same app over and over again. We'd have to put a lot of stuff in Gradle. We'd have to put Studio in Gradle, really, to do this.
Great, that's a good answer. A couple of related questions. Where is Studio support for C++ going, and are there any new features related to the NDK in Android Studio 2.0?
So I don't think 2.0 per se has new NDK features except for the GPU profiler. There have been features released shortly before 2.0, mostly the stuff I covered today. So the experimental Gradle support, I guess that's either before or after 2.0, depending on whether you count the day it was experimental or the day it stops being experimental. And then similarly, the debugger support is either right before or right after, depending on your counting. As far as more broadly where it's going, in the short term, I think I probably could not say with a straight face that there are no rough edges in the C++ experience. There's a number of rough edges, as anyone who's tried it will testify. And so for the short to medium term, we're really just focused on sanding those down and making it so the C++ experience is as smooth and easy as the Java experience can be. I think long-term plans will come after, after we get to that point.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Will Android Studio ever support bitmap suggestions in XML layout editing?
Sorry, one more time.
Will Android Studio ever support bitmap suggestions in XML layout editing?
Yeah, we should do that.
Great.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah.
If anyone else has feature requests, now is probably a
the
good
word
time.
was ever, right? There was no specific timeline.
Ever.
It will.
Yeah, okay, great. You've heard it here first. Okay, another question. Again, with a non-defined timeline. I know you announced the Eclipse deprecation. When will it officially be deprecated?
Well, just to clarify, so we actually deprecated Eclipse. So, so which means you should not use it.
So sometime in
really
the past is the answer.
What's that?
Sometime in the past is the answer.
In the past, right. But yeah, I mean, really, the focus has been on Android Studio for some time, and if you haven't made the conversion, all this cool stuff is not available on Eclipse. So really, use Android Studio and migrate over. If you have issues, please let us know. We can help you through that.
Okay, let's see. Would a feature like saving custom templates be introduced in any future version of Studio? Because that would be great.
Saving custom
templates.
Well, we support it now, kind of.
It's very convincing.
Yeah, the only way you can do it right now is you put your custom templates in the SDK folder under extras templates. The only people I know who do this are typically book authors, right? Because then they can sort of very easily do a repeatable thing for each chapter. I don't know, is that a feature a lot of people are excited about? Okay, well, we
that
have
guy would be
one
excited.
or two votes. Yeah, given all the other things we're trying to do, I don't know if it's top of our list, but we could always consider it.
But you could imagine, for example, like authors of Espresso to provide custom templates specifically for this library, right? And like other library authors might be interested in doing something like that.
Yeah.
Question from the audience, please.
Yeah, on the AOSP bug tracker, there have been a few passes, it seems, of bugs that are still active being marked as obsolete. How should the community interpret that? Like, what is the meaning of the obsolete closing status?
Are you talking about like some recent handful of bugs, or like a large number of bugs that were suddenly marked as obsolete?
Well, I think there've been like I think I've seen multiple passes of it, but there was one like very large, like bulk closing bug. Some of which were, there've been like numerous comments of saying, no, I still experience this. These are, a couple of these were things that I was still seeing, and so, but there was this like bulk closing. So what is, I guess, what was
Well, so some of the bulk closing that happened were just some people on the platform realizing that, hey, no one's looking at those bugs. There's probably some people who are still hoping that we'll fix them, but since no one is looking at them, let's actually tell people that we're not looking at them rather than just give false hope. It's like that's not the main bug tracker for the Android team. On the tools team, we do use it. This is our main tracker, but for the platform team, we have an internal tracker. And people are not, Android engineers on the platform may not look at it as often as maybe they should. Some do, and there's been some good improvement, I think, recently from people looking at it more closely. But if you have some bugs that are dating from 2008 when you released Android 1.0, it's like realistically we're not going to fix them. We might as well just close them.
And we're kind of in this. So most of the obsolete bugs I've closed they're filed against Studio 0.4, 0.5, even 0.8. And the point is that to us that is as ancient as Android 1.0 would be for the Android team, right? So we have someone reporting a stack trace where nothing really is current anymore, and we could spend a lot of time investigating that. But given the high volume of reports we get, it's probably better to close those as obsolete so that people don't put duplicates for a very similar symptom, but pointing to old information.
Right. So I don't think we've done bulk closing, but we have closed all the ones like that. But yeah, I mean, if there's a bug that you think is still there and really should be fixed, just reopen it. If it's on a newer version of Android, right? If it's still on Marshmallow, just reopen it.
I would add, make sure, if you file bugs, make sure you have clear repo steps and, screenshots. Because, some of the bugs we have are just like, hey, it doesn't work. And that we can't really work with those things. So be clear, follow the instructions on the bug templates, and we can respond back to you.
Thank you.
Please.
On a unit testing side, so now unit testing works really good. So everything that comes basically from Android is replaced for unit testing, right? Like this Android jar that's generated. But a lot of things come from the support libraries or get moved to the support libraries. So this is like real code that is not mocked out. Any solution there or someone working on those? That unit testing with things that come out of support library gets easier?
So what exactly is the question? You would like us to provide what exactly?
Provide something like a smokable jar that for the support libraries.
You mean to make the support libraries jars mockable? Or?
Yeah. So if you use something out of the support library, like extended view or something, you cannot unit test it anymore because there's a lot of code running there suddenly. There's no way often to mock this. Well, everything that comes out of Android itself, if it's a view, there's no code running when the unit tests are running.
We're not actively working on it at the moment, but it's on our roadmap. We actually discussed it, how we could actually extend our support to support libraries and GMS core and whatnot. We will be looking at it next year, hopefully.
Okay, thanks.
I've got a slightly open-ended question here from online. It says the performance tools are getting better rapidly, but need some more work. What's the plan for performance tools?
I can probably answer that. So if you saw the talk before, we are investing heavily on the live performance analysis. So the monitors that you're seeing is where we're investing. So we're going to invest in memory, CPU, battery. A lot of you asked me about, when are you going to do something about battery? So we are going to be doing something about battery performance. And the direction is we want to give you as much information as we can without you having to actually go and profile your app. And then if you really find a problem that you don't know how to solve, then we will give you the right tools to dig deep into that problem particularly and analyze it.
Great.
That's the direction.
Question from the audience.
Yeah, I had a question about the instant run functionality and how hard it would be for a third-party language to hook into that feature. Like, would it just be about producing a sufficiently granular, incremental build, or is there a very involved pipeline that they would have to sort of implement?
Okay, I guess that's for me. So you're talking about something like Kotlin, for instance?
Yeah.
All right. So in theory, the instant run is hooking up on the class files format already. So as long as your tool is producing a normal class file, in theory, we should be able to hook up fairly easily. However, we've never tried, so chances are it's not working. But yes, so we are definitely doing the bytecode instrumentation at the class file level. We just load the .class files and we instrument those. There's not much magic here. We've seen this around for quite many years.
All right. And then there's the new Transforms API, which is basically allowing more plugins to work.
So I don't know if you went to Xavier's talk earlier today, but there is the Transform API, which will help you introducing your transformer. But that probably won't take care of the Kotlin compiler, but still, there are many ways you will be able to hook up your code.
Awesome. Thank you.
And another question.
Hi, I'm wondering if there's any plans to include UI test recording. So Xcode has some sort of where you just click around, start recording your steps, and then you can just replay them. Is that something that may come in the future?
I mean, it's certainly something that we look at, because right now, I can get on stage, I can tell you, hey, Espresso is so awesome and so easy, but at the end of the day, you have to write your test, right? And so yeah, it's something that makes recording UI tests easier. It's also something that's interesting for us because, we can inject best practices through code generation. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously something that will improve and drive adoption of Espresso. So we certainly look at these kind of approaches, but we are not actively working on it right now.
Okay, thank you.
Another question from social media. Will it be possible to use Instant Run for apps with multi-dex enabled, so with more than 65,000 methods?
It actually already works.
Fantastic.
So it's better if you use the native multidexing. It's going to make it much faster. But I was actually helping somebody earlier today who was running into the 65K limit when he enabled his application with Instant Run, and we switched to multidex, and it worked, except we were surprised about how many methods we were adding, but we'll work on that. So yeah, no, it works.
Fantastic. Another question from the audience?
I have a second question. It's about, we have those annotations, non-null and nullable for a while now, which are really nice, but they only will be shown in Android Studio as like a warning, but it's not part of lint as far as I know. So is there any way to trigger this by lint so that a CI will say, hey, there's a problem, you're using something that is null?
Yeah, the problem is that to support that from lint, we'd basically have to duplicate functionality. This is sort of when you run it in Studio, it's done by IntelliJ, basically, right? So lint doesn't run that stuff on the command line. So we'd have to go to the trouble of re-implementing all that for lint's own uses, which may not be worth it. So the easier way to do it is to just run IntelliJ's own inspections from the command line, which you can do. If you look at the distribution, there's an inspect.sh script. So you do that plus a profile XML file that you can make, and you can run that from CI. You just get an XML file? No, you don't. You get lots of XML files, one per inspection. But you can do your own little command line processing of that.
We should do a better integration for that.
We should, yeah. Good point.
Thanks for the
Great, yeah, let's take another audience question.
My question is casual. So how did you make a decision to advance the Android Studio version to 2.0 instead of just 1 point something?
What justifies the extra 0.4?
That's interesting, is we debated it quite a bit internally, because I will say that in our own engineering team, I think it's fair to say the bar is very high, and the team feels strongly about not overpromising. So we debated at quite some length about the numbering. And ultimately, I think it'd be great if a couple of people weighed on this as well, but there are a few major features that we felt were significant in how they changed the way you will develop. Probably the most significant of those, as everyone in the audience that I've talked to in the last 2 days has mentioned, is Instant Run. Because it really does change the way you develop, and several of us have it running. Once you get used to running with Instant Run, the ones of us who have had it live for quite some time find no matter, even though there certainly are some bugs in the early implementations, you just don't ever want to have it off, because it just completely changes. You always end up writing code with the emulator up or the device up and seeing how it runs. I think the changes in the emulator are also very significant, and the two in combination are important because together you can execute code and see the results very quickly. Those were the two of the most driving forces. I would say the code search features are also quite significant. And actually, probably the other biggest one was the integration of IntelliJ 15, which I think, as we mentioned, the team did very rapidly. It really did just come out 3 weeks ago for those of you guys who watch IntelliJ 15, and it has a really wide range of features. We didn't talk about all those. We didn't enumerate them specifically in the keynote, although I think Tor did kind of an amazing job of walking you through some of the cool things you get with IntelliJ. But those were probably the three biggest things that drove us to do it: IntelliJ 15, the emulators, and Instant Run. Does anybody else want to talk specific? Because this is certainly something, it wasn't a decision that we made lightly because we feel so strongly about not overpromising.
Well, I think the other thing is that we released 1.0 about a year ago. So it seems like going to a major revision a year later is fair. Otherwise, we'd start like 1.10, 1.11, right?
And also, like last year, we did IntelliJ 14 on 1.2. And it felt like, at least to some of us, that the switch from 1.1 to 1.2, when we got all of IntelliJ 14 with like a brand new debugger UI and all of that, was kind of like the 1.2 didn't really show all the things you guys were getting. So yeah.
Thank you. Surprisingly detailed answer. Another question.
Okay, hi, it's me again. Just one thing about the CI bits. I don't really care about the dashboard thing, but having a plugin that I could use to configure Jenkins tasks and like hit run for manual build jobs would be really nice. So that's just like about the part before that. And after that, I have one other question about tests. it would be really nice to have performance tests where I can set a performance goal for like method X, and then like have the test running and that get alert when my performance is deteriorating for some reason. That would be really cool. Any ideas about that?
So if you look at the actual code lab, it actually uses a timeout in the test.
Oh, okay.
And so if you have a janky test and it goes past this timeout, the test will actually fail. So go downstairs and look at the code lab or do it from home. It's already there.
Thanks.
Another thing to add on the performance side, we are planning on all the analysis I mentioned we will do live on your app. We are planning on also porting that to a library that you can use on a CI environment. So you could check for example, leaked activity running your tests. So that's something we are planning.
Nice. So.
I have a question about the future. I know you don't like those, but I think I asked this for all of us. Are we going to have an Android Dev Summit in the future?
You've asked the right people. I hope so. Have you guys enjoyed this Dev Summit? I will pass that raucous applause on to the organizers. We've certainly enjoyed having it. Have you guys enjoyed this as a venue to launch your new product? Yeah?
I think it's been, and I'd love to hear, again, other folks talk about it. It's been incredibly valuable for us because of especially with this audience, with the folks who've chosen to attend this conference, the depth of the questions and the feedback that we're getting, the technical depth and the understanding that you have. It's tremendously valuable to the engineering team, and I'm sure you guys have noticed the caliber of folks that you're getting from the engineering teams of Android Studio, Android Platform, Android Framework. You've seen all of these, really very foundational people for Android Studio. You've seen, Diane Hackborn, Chet, like a very wide range of people who are quite critical in the decisions that drive Android. And so the feedback is just tremendously valuable for us. I think a key question for us, of course, because it's a lot of time for you, is this really worth your time? So I think that's probably the main thing we need to know. How many people in the audience would attend something like this again if we were to do it? Okay.
So most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can speak for the people here specifically. We would love to be able to do this again. So yeah, we hope so, I guess. But none of us are going to make that decision. So take that for what it's worth. We've got no one else behind the mic. I do have a couple more questions here. Let's see, what have we got? When do you plan to enable Instant Run for library projects, e.g. one library and one demo module in the same project?
So we will do, the first support will be for the sub-projects of the sub-module of your project. For the libraries, so far, we don't really have a plan to do this because we think that most of the time you are not changing the libraries you're consuming. Maybe there would be a mode. I don't know. We can still think about it. I'm not convinced it's necessary. I'm definitely convinced we need to do it for the main project and the other modules, the sub-module, the sub-projects. I don't think for library it's really necessary. I think it should be the library developer that should have his instant run when he's producing his library, not you when you're consuming it.
Well, just to be clear, if you have a library in your project that is a direct module dependency, even though it's a library, that we do instant run. So it's really only when you have a third-party Maven Central or JCenter artifact. That's the case we're talking about. I don't think you're modifying those.
Yeah, I don't.
So it does work. It's not like you can only instant run your main app module. All the modules in your project
Well, actually, today it's only the main app, but yes, it will. The preview 2, we will actually support the other modules.
Great. Question from the audience?
This is just a follow-up on the future Android Dev Summit plans.
Excellent.
If there is another one, can we request that it not be Thanksgiving week?
Can we also request? Can you also request it's in Bora Bora or someplace like that?
That doesn't necessarily help everyone here. Yes, noted. Let's have a look. This might be a little bit more for the Android Framework team, but we've got time. I'll ask your opinions. What are your thoughts on using event libraries like Event Bus compared to local broadcast manager? Any opinions? Do you have no thoughts? That's fair.
Well, I know which IDE you should edit it.
Good. People to save me, please.
Nobody's asking about glass. What? I actually have more of a request than a question. A number of times on stage, the framework team in particular has referred to Stack Overflow and getting answers off of Stack Overflow, and it seems like a lot of tech support and a lot of interaction with developers has been outsourced to Stack Overflow. So I'm just kind of requesting and asking that Google might take a little more responsibility. In the early days with the Google groups, members of the Android team used to answer questions. Roman and Diane were, responding to developers, and we could count on their answers. And we can count on Mark Murphy, kind of, sort of. And there are a lot of good tutorial sites, but most of the examples and example code are oversimplified, and when you're actually using some of these objects in practice, you need to look at questions around threading or larger input objects. And so that would be something I hope that you can take back to the entire Android team about helping us to be more effective.
Actually, I think you probably couldn't have asked us something that would make us happier. There's quite an internal discussion going on for us about a desire to dramatically deepen the level of technical content that we have. And so, I think you can see the level of passion the team has by the fact that there's, a lot of people sitting up here to connect with the Dev Summit. Would anyone else like that? Because this is certainly something we've talked about quite a bit. Anybody else want to talk about kind of our aspirational?
Well, there's the generating documentation, but I also heard a bit of tech support in that question, right?
Yes.
So I think it's hard to both get, finish Instant Run, and at the same time, answer lots of questions. So that's kind of a difficulty we have, balancing the how much time do you spend looking through user forums and responding and following up, and how much do you time to your daytime job.
Yeah.
But I think we can do a better job about, creating a user guide, for Gradle, okay, we want to do that. Having the DSL reference, okay, we want to do that. But we've talked in the past about having, a lot of, recipes, and that's kind of like what we did during our talk. It's like, here's a few things that, if you're trying to do that, do it that way. And be more proactive about showing best practices on a lot of use cases that we know developers need to do anyway. It doesn't really fit in the user guide where you're really teaching the workings, but just saying, hey, if you want to do that, here's how you do it. I think if we publish more of those and then they get indexed anyway, they'll be more discoverable. As Thor said, at the beginning, Android beginner and Android developer on Google Groups, there wasn't that many developers, and our team was smaller too, but there was still a pretty big load of questions to answer. Nowadays, it's like, I can't keep track. There's just too many of them. So sometimes, some developer will point me saying, hey, can you answer that question because I can get a good answer? And more often than not, it's not really a good question anyway. But when it is, I try to help. But it's hard, right? There's so many of them. And I think, what Jay was saying about bug report also is very important for Stack Overflow. I see a lot of questions that are just like, not just read the doc, but at least I'm less inclined to answer if you don't even try to really explain me what the problem is. Just saying, hey, it doesn't work, it just doesn't help me.
Well, that's not anybody here, right?
Well, hopefully. But well, it's live stream, so everyone is watching that too. It's important, right? It's like if you're asking for help online, try to make it easy on the person.
But just, I want to say for Stack Overflow, sure, there maybe are lots of I don't want to say dumb questions, but maybe they could have tried a little harder. But often when you're trying to find something out and you search for it, the best hit is Stack Overflow. You had the exact same question, 5 other people hit it, and people have voted up and down the solutions. Right. So often, for me, I find the actual answer there. But maybe that's because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to Android development. And if it was a tools question, I'd be like, no, that's the wrong answer.
So I'll say one more thing, and then actually we should probably go on to the next question. So you can see the depth of technical answers and documentation is something we're very passionate about. I think we talked some about the momentum of Android Studio recently with things like 103 releases and things of that nature. It's 2.0. The usage is enormous and the growth. I think one thing that we would be open about is that the growth of Android Studio, as explosive as it has been, has slightly scaled beyond our ability to keep up with everyone who's using it and asking questions. And so Rita was actually pretty modest when he introduced himself. We recently inaugurated him as the first ever Android Studio advocate in residence. And that was really acknowledging that we need to dramatically scale up our outreach and ability to answer questions, because as amazing as the engineering team is, it's just not scalable for us to answer every single question out of the engineering team to keep up with all the questions coming out of the community. So thank you very much for the feedback. And we've got to move on to the next question.
The Android Wear team, for example, I have some friends, some people in Cambridge that I've met, and they don't know who in developer relations they might refer me to. And so if the developer relations team is that divorced from the engineering team, then the community might not be getting
the developer relations team works very closely with the engineering team, so that's definitely not an issue.
Well, that was my experience. Was, go to Stack Overflow rather than go to developer relations.
Yeah, they definitely work very closely together. I would be happy to talk more offline. We can sync up. I'll be in the booth after the discussion.
It's just my request. If it's developer relations, great. Maybe we can beef it up, and just having more opportunities to get the best answers.
Absolutely. As the resident developer relations person up here, I should probably answer. Steph was very kind. Basically, she said in a very polite way that I have to fix that problem. So I will definitely be taking that on board. We have so many smart people which have all of the answers, and clearly one of the key things we can do in developer relations is help make sure that the most pressing questions that you have are answered by the right people. So helping to create that funnel, be that interface, is a big part of what we're going to do, and definitely something we want to improve on. So thank you for the feedback. Another question, please.
So as the Android kind of build tool chain has gotten more complex, more things go on between your Java and class files that come out, and we have more generated code, is there any tips for, this is my .java, I want to see what's the, what came out the other side, as opposed to kind of spelunking through the intermediates directory, or, for instance, if I want to see how this resource ends up getting packaged, or.
So for resources, we have, for Java, I don't think there's much beside, you would have to go through the intermediate folder and look at all the different transform and see the output and then see the classes.x. But for the resources, at least for merging, which is one case where you could have a resource that gets replaced by another one. Let's say you have one in source main res and then you have one in source debug res. You could not realize maybe that the one in debug replaced the one in source main. We do have a blame sort of file now because we need it for APT, where when APT runs on the result of the merge, we want to make sure that we display the errors as your actual original file as it is in source main or source debug, which was not the case before. Before you would see APT complain about a file that was an intermediary as being a problem, and you were like, why is that file there? I don't even know where the source is. So we could expose that potentially in Studio.
Well, I think we do. If you do show documentation on a resource, we show the overlays and we strike out. So if you have a base resource and you have a debug overlay, we'll show the debug value, and then we'll show the other one with strike through to show that it was hidden.
And there you go. It's already there.
What about the manifest merger? We also have a blame for the manifest merger, but I don't think we show that. For
the manifest merger, it's a bit harder because it's per node.
So you can have a text for the manifest merger that tells you which entry comes from which file, but I don't think you've got a visual element of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can do something too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the problem is for Java source file, though.
It's just, so you want to look at the, like...
I would Java P 2 folders and diff the output of Java P.
Okay.
I mean, that would tell you exactly what happened, right?
Yep.
Great, and I think we have just about time for one last question. There's no one at the mic, so I will ask it. Does Android Studio include screen reader support? And if not, when is this coming?
Okay, I can take that. It's something we're working on, and in fact, we would like everyone who needs this to try it in 2.0 preview. So the source editor itself should now work. We've tested it on Windows, on Mac. On Mac, there are some other JDK bugs that prevents lists from being iterated correctly. So the best platform right now for accessibility in 2.0 is Windows with the latest JDK. But the source editor actually should work everywhere.
Great. So yeah, it'd be great to hear your feedback if you're impacted by that. So I think that just about wraps us up on time. There's no one waiting in the queue. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. And thank you to the audience for your wonderful questions. And yeah, we'll be around. Thanks.